CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Welcome back to CMMS Radio. If you're not looking, I'm going to tell you on screen, you're seeing Steve Morris. He is with Mainstream Community. A lot of you might know them. They're out of Australia. They do have a long history. I mean, we're talking easily 3 decades. The horsepower they've got when it comes to the advisory boards that are in charge of these things, the community that they run, the learning. We know Australia is big on infrastructure. There's some news coming you might have read about. We're going to talk about it on this episode about what's coming next. But they really know what they're doing. They're very focused on community. And Steve and I got an opportunity to meet. We were talking over the last several months. We're finally here doing an episode. So first of all, Steve Morris with Mainstream Community, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Thanks, Greg. It's an absolute privilege to be here. I'm excited to chat.
I am too, and we have worked several times to figure out the timing. You're on the other side of the globe, so we're here, we're doing it. And first thing, just out of the gate, could you tell us a little bit about your role? Because with Mainstream, you wear a lot of different hats. You're one of the co-founders and owners. You have essentially seen it all, but you're still looking to see more and do more. But tell us a little bit about your role, the many hats that you wear, and some of the stuff that makes Mainstream Community what it is. It's very special.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, my role, Greg, is pretty multifaceted, to be honest. So I do a lot of stuff. As owners, everyone just chips in and does a bunch of stuff. There's, we're a small, compact team of about 20 people, and so everyone really has to be a bit agile. But I'd say my primary role is to help grow the Mainstream community and evangelize Mainstream and take it into whether it's new sub areas or whether it's new geographies. My role is growth, essentially. And so I suppose the genesis of this conversation is our growth into the UK with Mainstream and how we're moving out of Australia and New Zealand and heading that way. And so that's something I'm leading. But there are many other things I do. For many years, I was responsible for our research and production. So I would interview hundreds and hundreds of heads of maintenance, heads of reliability, leaders in asset management, and understand what it is that they're challenged by and what makes them tick. And then convert that into storytelling through the means of speakers. So that's what we call production, is hunting for stories that mirror the research. So growth on the one hand, research and production on another, and then we've got a pretty decent sized training business, and I'm involved in that as well, as we take training in much smaller niche areas, be it supervisor school or planning and scheduling or vibration analysis, and we bring training to our community. So a bit of everything, to be honest.
It's well, and what's important about this, I love stories too. I like having very candid, unplanned conversations. I even run panel discussions the same way, and they all tend to work out really, really well. Don't know how, but when people in this industry show up at any level, long-term, real deal practitioner, someone who's on the fringes, putting those people together, someone that likes to participate in the communities, deal with Q&A, opening up new avenues within the maintenance and reliability space, which is actually both quite expansive and narrow all at the same time. And what I mean by that, having not ever been a CMRP myself, but talking to lots of maintenance and reliability practitioners that are what I consider heavy hitters in the global space. They've been in the places, they've been in the trenches, they've done the real work, oil and gas, you name it, infrastructure, all of it, right? This thing for me, and I think a lot of people that are part of the community, is we get to constantly learn. And then that learning, whether you go to Mainstream like the one that's coming up this month there in Australia, or the one we're about to talk about where you're opening up for the first time ever the UK with the Mainstream UK Summit, we get to stack those learnings. We get to ask these more kind of deep questions where we're not so worried about whether we're getting it right for some huge classroom. It's not a lecture hall. It's real practical, actual stories about what happened, what was the problem, how did we really fix it. So when you talk about all this, I know you've done a tremendous amount of research, not with just what you just described, but when it comes to the UK in particular, this UK summit, the mainstream UK summit, it's going to be, let me just pull this up so that I'm not doing too much guesswork. It's 21 October 2025. And for us over here, we would say October 21st, 2025. It's at Millennium Point in Birmingham. That's in the UK. And what Mainstream is doing, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong on this, Steve, they're reimagining maintenance and reliability. And there is some data that supports this, some things that you've found out. But I'm fascinated by that because a lot of people want to see these kind of changes. So tell me everything about it.
Sure. Gosh, there's so much to tell you. I would say the first and primary thing to say is that we're unashamedly dedicated to the maintenance and reliability community. We aren't lots of things. We go deep. So we go deep with extensive research. And what our extensive research reveals to us is that when you interview these reliability heroes, as we call them, who are the backbone of operational excellence across all these asset-intensive businesses, when you talk to them one-to-one, and all of our research is either one-to-1 or 1-15. And I just want to explain what I mean before I finish what I'm saying. That is, we interview people in one-to-one. We don't do research off the internet and read a Gartner or McKinsey or any report, and they all have great value. We interview people. So for the UK event, for example, we've interviewed over 200 maintenance leaders, and many of them are one-to-one, and some of them on 6 occasions we ran 1-15 focus groups or think tanks, as we might call them. We've called them roundtable discussions in other parlance, but we bring together 10, 12, 15 maintenance leaders and we ask them, what are your biggest challenges that you're facing right now? And they tell us the answers. And when we aggregate everything we learned in our one-to-ones and our 1-10, 12, 15s, and we put it all together, we then publish a white paper, a research paper that is essentially the state of maintenance and reliability in that territory. And that is like directly from the horse's mouth. It's the stuff they battle with daily. Essentially, the question is, and this isn't what we asked them, but this is the question's tantamount to, if we were to solve 10, 12 problems for you that would change your work environment, what would those challenges be that you face that you haven't yet found a solve for by only looking internally? And that's essentially what that white paper or research report publishes. And then we put it out there and thousands of people read it. And we then set out to go hunt for the storytellers who've solved those things on the list. Now, they might have solved a whole category. They might have solved a couple of categories of things, or they might have solved one bullet point within a subcategory. But if they've solved something that the community is trying to fix for themselves, and we can stand them on a stage and get them to share why it happened, how it happened, what they did, and tips and tricks around it, well, then we know that everyone's going to get better. And so I suppose what sets Mainstream apart is that firstly, it's deeply focused in the maintenance reliability. And in other words, we say asset management. In the UK, we talk about maintenance and reliability because it's a slightly different thing. We're dedicated to that, and we are essentially mirroring what the people want. So it's by the people for the people. And that isn't just the research. Yes, the research is with people, and we publish this report based on what they say. But we then use that content to go and find storytellers who are in the community. So almost all the content at Mainstream is what people call case studies, practitioner-led case studies. Now, there are many conferences where that's like a highlight. There are some case studies. We don't have anything but case studies. It's people want to hear from their peers. So our vendors and our partners and our sponsors, those people who implement technology solves or process optimization, they might be in our expo, on our show floor. And on our show floor, they can showcase some of their innovation in these innovation theaters. But when it comes to the 4 or 5 tracks that make up Mainstream, Mainstream UK, the Aussie event has 8. It's all practitioners telling their story. So ask the people what they want, show them what they said, hunt amongst them for the storytellers, put them on a stage sharing best practice, and then nurture an environment where the conversation can flow from what is that presentation. Because in 45 minutes, you really only get a trailer of how somebody did it. But we then send them to Speaker's Corner after they've spoken. And
Mm.
there, people come and gather around them and really get into dialogue. And we have content delivered in many different ways. It's not just I speak at you. We do have those lectures, but we also have exchange sessions and think tanks and perspective sessions where three different people deliver on the same topic, so you get three perspectives. I could go on for hours. Our secret sauce is that it's by the people for the people, and it's delivered by them, and that we simply create an environment where the community can share. And it's not just at the day of the conference or the 2 days of the conference. We have an online community where all of that then lives online, where there are groups that different groups can come together in. So, for example, gosh, this is a long answer. For example, water utilities meet on the mainstream community network on the platform, and they come together from various
Mhm.
water utilities and have a regular conversation and share best practice between each other and learn from each other. And that's off the back of them coming together to mainstream and going, you know what, I could probably learn something from you. That was really interesting. We're in the same environment. So that's one example. Another is that all the content delivered at mainstream then finds a home on the community network, and people can consume it whether they were or weren't at the conference. So maybe I'll stop there because I've covered quite a lot of ground. But I would say
Well,
that's how we really differentiate ourselves.
and that's what matters because there's all kinds of things we could do from a marketing flash and pizzazz perspective, and let's say all the right things, but it's much more important that we say the real things. And for me, I'm always interested in getting to talking about and kind of shouting about where and why did something even come into existence in the first place? What is part of its beating heart, the DNA of an organization, the DNA of a community when people come together? And on one hand, and I say this all the time, I don't mean it to be like kumbaya, we're all singing songs and, watching rainbows and all this stuff. It's because there's a commonality around the community about solutioning against these problems that they experience, but they're actual problems. They're real problems. They weren't made up by somebody in a marketing department that found just a one off and said, ooh, let's put that out there and make it shiny and really attract everyone and tell them that they have this problem. Rather, this is the other way around. We have this problem. We have that problem. We've had this problem. And then you say, all right, we found all the problems. Now let's find the other people that have had them and solve them. For example, you and I recently traded some communication about a close friend of mine. His name is Joe Anderson with Reliability X. And he's the kind of individual, that whole group is all about solutioning. It's not about complexity. It's about real. It's about what really works. And how did you get to that outcome? And why did that outcome matter to your organization, whether it is in water, whether it is in some other energy, infrastructure, like you say, asset intensive environments. So all of this stuff, like when I hear you talking about it and then I start talking about it, I start getting really amped up because I've also been in the community. So it can go both directions in my view, whereas you might be part of the community and once you get approved and you're in, you're learning all these things, and then you find out about mainstream UK summit, or maybe it's one of the other ones that's going to come after that. And now you go, or you went to one of them and then you became part of the community. Maybe you came as an attendee. Incidentally, I have some people that I know that are coming to the one there in Australia. And I've even told them, hey, do you want me to make some calls? Do you want me to talk to some people, see if maybe there's more you can do there? And they said, you know what? Thank you, but we're going to go. We're happy to pay. And there was a really special thing where they're allowed to register and attend, and then they could bring someone with, and just all the buzz around that is really exciting. I know a bunch of people that are going to that. And for the UK summit, I want to kind of switch into this. We've got a really strong lineup of people that a lot of people will know. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind doing just You don't have to say what they're going to be talking about, but maybe list off 3 or 4 or 5 people that are going to be speaking at Mainstream UK Summit. And that way some people can recognize those names instead of me saying them and butchering them.
No problem at all. Just before I do, though, I want to quickly ask you. I want to answer something you said earlier that really struck a chord for me. You were talking about authenticity, and you were talking about how it has to be real people. It has to be real conversations, and we couldn't agree with you more. Deep in our culture, as a business, is exactly that point. And so it reminds me of when we started interviewing these folks, and we started asking them what they challenged by. And you would imagine that a bunch of engineers would tell you that they're challenged by pretty technical, detailed engineering stuff. But it turns out they're quite good at that stuff. That's why they were engineers or why they were drawn to that vocation, right? But the stuff that really grabs them is where mainstream's differentiated itself from a content perspective. Of course, you're going to learn how to do better condition based monitoring. Of course, you're going to learn about people's experience with RCM or overall equipment effectiveness and how to increase that. Or all of those things are obviously
Mm-hmm.
part of a maintenance and reliability conference. But what mainstream really likes to differentiate itself around is the human side of maintenance leadership. It's that stuff that the people talk to us about when you ask them genuine questions. They grapple with the soft skills like engineers do, like we know they do. And so there's always been a big focus in mainstream, not just about the technical engineering. And this is what makes it slightly different. But there's been a big focus on the soft skills. How do I better communicate my vision? How do I align what I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to do with the broader strategy of the organization, my maintenance strategy with my organization strategy? How do I get operations and supply chain either side of me to work in cahoots with me rather than against me? Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what do I think about my supervisors and how do I help them learn the soft skills? Because that's a really tough gig when they come off being a tradie on the shop floor and they now become a leader. How do they adopt a new theory or way of thinking around being part of the leadership group as opposed to their mates that they might have a beer with and they work with? How do they change the way they relate to them? These are the soft skills. What do I think of my workforce's mental health issues who work remotely up in the Pilbara or offshore on oil and rigs miles away from their family? And how do I
Yeah.
bring diversity into my workplace because diversity of thought is helpful for outcomes? Like all of these things are the soft skills that live between the lines in all of mainstream's content. And when you talk about authenticity, I think it would be remiss for me not to share with you that that's what being authentic is. People are at work for 40 plus hours a week and they bring themselves to work. And so with it comes whatever angst they're carrying, and their leadership style and the culture of their organization is hugely impacted by the human aspect. And so mainstream has to reflect that. I think that's important to
What
say.
this is at essentially, I don't know if I'm right, but it sure the heck feels right to me that when we talk about what we do, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to produce, we're trying to be safe about it. We don't want people to get hurt. We don't want disruption and on and all the things that we all hear and talk about. But when you focus in on what we might term as basics, basic fundamentals, fundamental excellence, fundamental maintenance excellence, cultures of excellence within an organization, it all has to be connected. When someone leaves their home or goes to whatever it is, wherever it is that they do their work, maybe it's in their home, at the office, in the house. But when they show up, they're taking away from something else. They're in there, they're dedicated, and they want to know that it has not just meaning to themselves, but to everyone that they're working with. And for some, they may think that's like a pipe dream or pie in the sky, which is not true. If you focus on the human aspect, you humanize this, the human centric approach to all of this. Some might call it a holistic approach. That's what matters most, because who does the actual work? It's people. Who gets the things that you're making? It's people. Who suffers the disruption and the downtime when a machine fails because You don't have quite the right communication between operators and maintenance and maybe mid-level management. That's all people. Technology's great, but these are a bunch of tools. So what good is a hammer if someone doesn't know how to swing it properly in order to drive a nail? Otherwise, you're bending a bunch of nails, and that is really important. And for me, I could really spin out here because I've been able to see it and I've been able to learn it for at least 3.5 years with what I'm doing now. But then all the years prior, you start to see it in retrospect. And then when you start to kind of grasp it, you see it in action and it unfolds in real time. This happens at a conference like this. And with some of the people that I happen to know that are on the roster, like Nancy Reagan or Drew Troyer, and the list goes on. And then I start thinking of the people that are at the one in a couple of weeks too, and I get the names all twisted around, but it's really about that. And then these strategies, the solutioning of these problems is all based around that first and foremost. So I just wanted to reaffirm what you said because it gets me excited because that's the actual stuff that matters. I don't care what your software is. I don't care what your technology is. If the people aren't bought in and they care deeply and the organization also cares deeply, that's how you get
Yeah,
places.
yeah, exactly right. And I'd love to share a little bit about the roster of who's speaking, but I think equally as importantly, and I will do that. I think equally as importantly is to share with you a little bit about what came out in our research across those 200 conversations and
Let's do
what's
that.
represented, but also just to tell you one more piece of the process that I haven't. So I explained earlier that we go and ask the people what they want. And then I explained that we hunt amongst the storytellers, amongst the community, and find the storytellers of people who've solved some of that stuff. What I didn't tell you is that in parallel to that, we form an advisory committee. And our advisory committee for the UK mainstream, for example, is 24 very well known heads of maintenance and reliability across the biggest businesses you can name, from water utilities to massive manufacturers to oil and gas, across the board, people with mining experience, cities of municipalities, etc., etc. And they are senior leaders, and they take the content that we hunt for and they assess it, they vet it, and they help us curate it. They
Mm,
don't just choose whether it comes onto the program or it doesn't. And they discard, or not discard, that's an unkind word. They might reject a presentation and give us an explanation. We think this presentation's light on this, that, and the other. Or this presentation's amazing if the speaker speaks on the second and third bullet point, which is really the crux of what we understand the research to be. And then we're able to go back to that
mm,
speaker and say, listen, they've given you a second bite of the cherry. Can we reframe this around this? And we work with our speakers to then be speaking on the right stuff. And the reason is we don't want to set anyone up to not get the best outcome from their presentation. We want them to be proud of what they speak about. And we want the community to not just tell us what they want to learn, but we want them then, these 24 people represent a microcosm of the community, and they then select the storytellers so that this person can be confident that when they stand up, the story is going to be of value to what they tell. So
mm.
our steering committee, our advisory committee is something that's really interesting to look at. If you go to mainstreamcommunity.com, which is our website, and you go into the UK summit and you go look at our advisory committee or our steering committee online, you'll be able to see the incredible lineup of people who are not only going to bring their teams to the conference, but are also going to assess and vet and help us curate the content that is delivered. So that's the one thing I wanted to say about the rest of our model. It's from beginning to end, the community centric. But onto the research, we spoke about these softer skills and we spoke about this tripod really. There's the better process around maintenance, how I increase my overall equipment effectiveness, how I increase my throughput, how I reduce my downtime, and tips and tricks and tools to do that. There's this people, soft, right brain stuff that is all about leadership and culture, that's fundamental to mainstream. And then there's technology that's fundamental. Now, one of our secret sources is we're not partisan. We're not about any particular technology. We're completely independent. But
Yeah.
technology definitely has a role to play within the right sort of framework of people and process being correct, because then you can get the tech right. So whether it's you're looking to implement modern automation or AI, or whether you're trying to re-implement your CMMS, or whether you're trying to fix your master data because you're getting garbage out, because not the right stuff's gone into the system in the first place. The technology piece and all those who vend technologies and are experts in implementing it are a big part of mainstream as well. They're a third, I would say, of that whole story. So when you look at the research, just getting onto my point, one of the biggest topics that came out in the UK, and we not just did the research and wrote the paper, we then went and tested the paper again with our steering committee. Converting fragmented asset data into actionable insights rates as one of the top two topics that maintenance leaders want to talk about. We've got tons of data coming off our systems, whether it's sensors, or whatever other type of data in an IT OT convergence world or an IoT Industry 4 world. We've got a lot of data in our CMMS, we've got data everywhere. But how do we take it and actually do better stuff because of it? Is one big piece that actually has a process, a tech, and a cultural answer. And all of those are explored, right? Another
Yeah.
topic that came out as fundamental is this change in culture that's required from being a breakdown, reactive culture to becoming much more proactive and escaping firefighting cycles. And all of that isn't just about process, it's actually about the way we KPI and talk about our people, because a lot of people in our world came into this world because they want to ride their white horse in at 3 in the morning, fix something, be slapped on the back, and they're a hero.
Yeah.
And they are heroes. They keep industry running. But if we flip that around and instead we incentivized never seeing them, they're much bigger heroes if all the planning and scheduling is done well and all that preventative work is such that they never have to ride in on their horse, and we pay them more for that and we celebrate them more for that. That sort of cultural shift, all that whole sort of theme of topics became a big fundamental aspect of our research. And finally, the other third piece of that is all around this aging workforce and the loss of knowledge that's gonna happen to us and has been happening to us, but will continue to happen over the next 5 or 10 years as that accelerates. Not only the loss of knowledge, but the changing in skill set that's required for maintenance people to be effective as we change their world. And so I'll move on to the content itself, or what's on the roster. But I think it's important to explain what came out in the research. And there's a lot more to it, obviously. I'm giving you a very short
Of
précis,
course.
but it's important to understand that that's what came out in the research, and that we don't just then take a chance and go, all right, you can speak on that subject. We go through another hoop still, and that is a steering committee that job it is to select and curate.
I think I think it's important because these are, at first blush, people may think it's very simple. You have three different components that have to play well and complement one another and make sense. But it's complicated because people still struggle with and don't quite know how to do it, which is why you want to bring in the right people that do, that can also not only know how to do it, but know how to teach it, know how to speak about it in a way that is not only well received, but inspires enough critical thinking for someone to wrestle just a little bit with it, not just a bunch of this, but we want gears turning, no pun, but we got a lot of gears going on in the world of maintenance and reliability. And when that's happening, people are actively working with the information. So there becomes this other kind of thing that happens. And that's the whole point. So you're trying to orchestrate that type of an outcome, but not, it's by design, but it's also serendipitous in that you've got the right people, the right available learners, and all of it, so that it just kind of works. But you still have to do those things, and anything less than that puts it at risk of not being beneficial. One thing I wanted to add about the heroes that come riding in on their white horse and they handle the problems, they put out the fires, that's all great and good, but maintenance, highly effective maintenance and reliability programs should necessarily be boring as hell. And that's when you know you're winning, because you don't have breakage, you have production.
Yeah,
And I
I
think it's
like to compare
fascinating.
it to a good referee in I don't know how to Americanize it, but I'll say in a rugby game or a football game, a soccer game, where the refs had a great game if you don't see them. Um, it's a bit like your IT guy. You also really don't want to have much to do with them. You just want everything to work. You know, no one calls them at the end of the day and goes, just want to say, you know, shot. Everything worked well today. But just to your point, people learn differently. So you're right. I mean, what you're really skirting around is it's actually very easy to build a conference, very easy to build a very average, crappy conference or a very average one. It doesn't
Hmm.
even have to be a crappy one. It can be ho hum, middle of the road. Not hard to do. You bring some people together, you put them on a stage, you have some people listening, and that's a conference, right? But to build an outstanding conference that stood for 29 years as a leader and lived through the global financial crisis of '08, '09, and through COVID and has grown after both of those cycles, you really need to tap into the fact that people learn differently. You can't deliver one set of content types to everyone because some people will sit after 5 minutes listening to a lecture and zone out and they'll take nothing. Some people need to be in a dialogue, in a conversation. Others need to hear different perspectives. Some want to go touch and feel solutions. Others want to be in 10-minute snippets of short staccato content that they can then take into a conversation that follows in a think tank or a roundtable debating that. And you've got to be cognizant of all of that if you want everyone to leave with a good experience. So I would say that's
Yeah.
another thing that we really focus on is making sure that we recognize that everybody learns differently and delivering our content through various mediums at the same time. I keep it.
It's important. It's important to have all those various features. And I've gone to several conferences. I mean, certainly uh, nowhere near what, all the people I know have participated in over their decades of experience and all over the globe. But there's there's something that you can recognize and take away from a conference experience that you can then see when it's missing or absent at other conference experiences. You don't want it to be too overwhelming. You certainly don't want it to be underwhelming. And you want it to add value. You want it to be impactful. You want people to have things that they can improve themselves and then take home and improve their organization. And if those things are happening, then you're doing what you set out to do for them, which is why the conference exists in the first place. And it's very exciting that you're opening up this new region and being in the UK. I mean, I know there's one person that's going to be there, and I haven't seen him for a couple of years, and I'm really excited that I get to see him there. His name's Gary Tyne. You
I
know
know.
Gary, and I'm like telling him, "Hey, man, I'm going to see you. I'm going to see you." And he's like, "What? You're coming to Birmingham?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And yeah, I mean, not everybody knows that yet, but they're
Yeah,
about to.
yeah. Well, they do now. Yeah, Gary Tynes on our steering committee is a champion of a human being. He's connected us into many people, and that's really how you've got to build something new in a new territory. So yes, we're coming to the UK. 20th and 21st of October, we're in Birmingham. We chose Birmingham for two reasons. Firstly, it's central. So it's very central. It's called the Midlands for a reason. You can get there in an hour and a quarter, soon an hour and 10 minutes when they build a new multi-billion-dollar train. You shave 5 minutes, I'm told, off the trip. The English people listening will understand what I'm saying. You can get there from London in an hour, hour and a half. You can get there from Manchester in a couple of hours. You can even get down from Glasgow and Edinburgh on a train. I've just done it. I've been all over. And Birmingham's nice and central. The other reason is it's a bit of a nod to the Industrial Revolution. It's actually the home of where all of the world that we operate with heavy equipment and mechanical devices and machinery, where it was all born. In fact, we're having a cocktail party on night zero, which is the night before the conference on the 20th, in this most incredible museum, which has got Spitfires and locomotives and old vintage cars. And
Oh,
it's really, we love it for that reason because we think our audience is going to love it. So we chose Birmingham because it's the middle of the country and because it's a hotbed of industrialization. Within an hour and a half of Birmingham is every car manufacturer, most of them at least, within that region. Um, And we tossed up with Manchester, which is probably also a decent argument, being quite industrial and also quite central, albeit further north and central if you include Aberdeen, which is the hotbed of oil and gas. But we've gone with Birmingham, year one. Mainstream is 29 years old in Australia, and it's run in Sydney and Melbourne over 29 years, and Melbourne these days on the East Coast. On the West Coast, it runs in Perth and draws over 700 people to Perth. This year we had 720 people in Perth. We'll have over 700 in Melbourne this month. Call it 1,400 people a year in Australia that Mainstream draws. We used to do Mainstream Auckland for many years and get a big crowd down there as well in New Zealand. We've done Mainstream South Africa, which we launched for, we had over 4 years in the 2014 to 2017 period. And the same in the US when we launched in the US. And we actually, part of our business was acquired in the US. Our US business was acquired, and the people who bought it had a mandate around technology, and Mainstream didn't fit perfectly. So they switched it off. But in the 3 or 4 years that Mainstream ran in the US, it grew to about 450, 500 people. And of course, SMRP and Terry O'Hannon's IMC in Florida are bigger, but nothing else was bigger in the US in our short 3-4 year history. So we felt we were on a good trajectory there, but business happened, so it is what it is. But the UK is really a hotbed for conferences, and when we look around the UK, to put a dedicated maintenance and reliability conference that's focused on maintenance and reliability, not necessarily asset management, and that's focused as a conference that's all it's about, not necessarily tagged on to a broader manufacturing event or a big trade show. It really will be a standout in the UK, and so we're hopeful that 350 people come along and enjoy the first year as we grow it over time. Our ambition is to get the right 350 people there, and not just to get 500 people. We want people who can make a difference and who come to learn for a reason. And we're super excited about everything to do with Mainstream, including the venue, which is attached to the Birmingham University Millennium Point. I went and walked around it last month, and it is absolutely stunning with this beautiful museum I referenced. We're going to have a great time, you and I, Greg. Looking forward to it.
I am too, and I've been talking to people about it. I've been at some other conferences asking them, are they going to go? And luckily enough, serendipitously, I bumped into Guy Freebody when I was down there in Schaumburg, and he comes walking up, and like, whoa, so that was pretty cool. We got a nice picture, and this is really exciting. And well, you already know about this, but I've got another episode I'm getting ready to record in the coming hours, we'll call it, with someone that's giving at least 2 separate presentations, who is, I think, a well-known and well-respected individual in maintenance and reliability across the globe, and that would be Drew Troyer.
Well, Drew's a almost 25-year Mainstream veteran. He's been out to Mainstream in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the States. He's spoken wherever we are. You can ask him tomorrow what he thinks of Mainstream relative to the conference landscape for professionals like him. I'll let him answer that, because I suspect I know what he'll say. Drew, obviously one of the sort of original founders of Noria, went on to be the head of global asset management for Anglo, later Rio Tinto for a stint, but is known in his writing and all of his work, academia, as a consultant at Accenture for a while, and he has his own business, Bootleg Partners, with John Schultz. That Drew's incredible, and he's got a number of very, very good keynotes. I mean, he's worth the admission price alone when he defines maintenance and reliability in dollars and cents, or whether he talks about sustainability in practice, or whether he talks about precision maintenance, which is actually a course he's written around precision maintenance, what they call FLAB in the US, fasteners, lubrication, alignment, balance. And we deliver that through our asset schools by Mainstream Business, where he's one of our trainers, Drew, and others train his stuff as well. So Drew's a classic example. I'm stoked you've got him on your show. Yeah, he-
I
he's
I am
awesome.
too. I we finally got it worked out, and there were some plane rides that were getting in the way, and it's going to happen, and I'm really excited about that because I love nothing more than having these conversations around an industry that I love that touches so many things that have been a part of my life. But we look around us and it's touching all the things, and then you bring it all the way back to people. That's not just good stuff. It makes a difference. It matters. It's about preserving and progressing, but there's that whatever I'm trying to describe that's indescribable that happens with this whole process. So I can't wait to interview Drew. Um, it is time for you, Steve, to go through, to suffer through what all first timers on CMS radio must endure. It is called the Fun Question
Oh,
segment.
wow. Okay. I never even got to the bit where I told you about all of our stories from NASA and every other company that's coming to speak at Mainstream. I'll tell you what people can do. Go to mainstreamcommunity.com and they can go and click on each speaker's photo. We've only announced the first 20, and there'll be a lot more than that. But click on their photo and it will drop down what the abstract is about, and you can learn a little bit about what they're speaking on, and you'll be suitably impressed by the quality of not just internationals but local case studies from the UK, and there are a lot of them. And go look at our steering committee. Let's do the fun segment, Greg. I'm all yours. I'm nervous, but I'm all yours.
Nothing to be nervous about. So the first rule of the Fun Question segment is there are no wrong answers.
Okay.
So no tricks, no surprises, just fun stuff as if we just want to get to know you in a slightly different framework. Number one, what is your favorite music?
Folky rock. Do you want me to be more specific?
Give us one example of a folky rock musician or band.
Mumford and Son, Bob Dylan.
Got it. We got that. That's a good one. Fun question number two. I think I know the answer, but I'm not going to make any assumptions. It's very dangerous to do that. What is your favorite sport or hobby? And on sport, it does not have to be one that you play. It could be one that you like to root for, cheer for, or watch when you're at the pub.
This is a very easy question for me because I have a very deep relationship with what we call rugby union. I coach. I have coached for 20 plus years. I've done media. I've played and written about and been commercially involved with rugby at many levels. And it is we call it the game they play in heaven. In fact, I sit here, and most days when I'm not being interviewed, I would wear my Eastern Suburbs Rugby Club hat. And behind me, you might see my Springbok head, which is a buck from South Africa, and also the name of the world champions, our national rugby team. And I've got lots of memorabilia all over the wall. So that's an easy one, Greg.
Nice, nice, nice. Well, here's the big one. And again, no wrong answers on this. This is all you. What is your philosophy, perspective, opinion, anything at all when it comes to this concept of work-life balance?
My philosophy on work life balance is that the only thing that matters is your output. Organizations that focus on how many hours you work or where you work from or anything that I would put into the bucket of input are out of touch. And balance also is something that might be I go through 4 or 5 weeks where I do 65 hours a day. And then I go for 4 or 5 hours a week where you won't find me, even if you call me or text me, because I'm out of commission. So balance can be balance every day. I can go boxing or the gym in the morning and have an 8 hour work day and hang out with my kids in the evening, my wife in the evening. And that's balance. But balance might be I go absolutely hell for leather for a bunch of weeks and then I chill and do a few hours a day. So I just think it's about output and it's about being sustainable. So over time, if you can contribute over 20, 30 years in your profession, where you come out the other side and you go, you know what, I made a contribution and I kept in balance. I didn't make myself sick and I enjoyed my life at the same time. I don't know that anyone would give you a different answer, though. I think, isn't that the answer?
Well, and I'm allowed to at this moment say maybe. what I'm really interested in about this question and these fun questions during this segment, I made it up a long time ago because I thought we would have something a little bit more personal but still useful. So the music is fun, the sport is interesting, and sometimes is reflective of what someone does in their life overall. And then when we close out with that, it it would matter to somebody. So the most important person that it matters to right here, right now is you. And then it kind of transcends from there. So it's meant to be something useful, fun, insightful about you and useful for someone that hears it that might say, I like that because I kind of do that. Or someone else might say, I never thought about it that way. And we're all on this same journey, whether we realize it or want to accept it or not. We're all heading in the same direction. We started out the same way. We're going to finish the same way. So in the meantime, let's hear from some people on what their perspectives are. And it's not about being right. It's about just answering a question from your heart and forgetting about the fact that we were on a podcast. My whole
You're
goal
on
with
a
this, Steve,
podcast?
is to,
I forgot.
yeah, yeah. I want people to forget because that's when the best stuff happens and it's going to help somebody and it's going to inspire somebody. So with that, we've got our first one in the can, my friend, Steve Morris. Mainstream community. We're heading to Mainstream UK Summit #1, the first of many, and it's going to be a blast. Thanks for being here with me on CMMS Radio.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be here.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit cmmsradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.